Okay, you've touched a little on the last question, but from Caroline, what about the sacrament or communion ordinance that Mormons and many other religions practice? Can you explain what went on during the night of the Last Supper and how that event got misinterpreted?
Sure. In the night of the Last Supper, or the so-called Last Supper, we've just basically had a bit of a gathering, or what people nowadays might call a party. And, you know, because many of us were in Jerusalem for only a period of a couple of weeks, we managed to meet many of our friends and acquaintances that we hadn't seen for some time, usually for at least 1 year. And so we decided to have a get-together, just as people do, of all sorts of people. You were there, you know, all the women were there as well as the men, and many of their wives and children were there. It was just a normal gathering. Of course, I did sometimes teach some things at those gatherings, and that was a gathering that, you know, that you and I both feel emotional about because of the teaching that we had about, you know, the humility of washing someone's feet and the importance of serving another person, doing a job that normally a slave would do, even. And, you know, the significance of that particular act is what both of us felt was the most important part of the night, probably. However, what's happened since is that it's been portrayed as a celebration that I knew that I was going to die. And while I was aware generally that I was going to die in the future, I didn't feel that it was necessarily going to be the next day. I realised that there were certain problems occurring in amongst the high priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees and even in the Roman at the time, that were all being caused to stir because of my being present in Jerusalem at the time. But I didn't feel that my death was going to happen tomorrow. It was only later in the evening after the supper that I felt some lack of safety for you and sent you off to a different place than I was, and basically felt some sense of lack of safety for myself as well, which John, who had by this stage died, talked to me about in spirit. But there was no significance to the actual night aside from that. We did not install or initiate any process of, you know, my blood being like the wine and the bread being my body and these things being a symbol of a person being saved. As I've said previously, it's totally physically impossible for my body or my blood from the first century to save anybody. Just because it's just an organism that passes as soon as the breath of life was extinguished from my body. So there was no significance in the process whatsoever.
But this idea that your sacrifice may, just as you talked about the sacrificial lamb earlier, obviously this is the motivation for...
Yes, later Bible revisionists who wanted to amalgamate the sacrificial lamb principle with the blood and the body of this lamb being the sacrifice that takes away the Israelites' nation's sin. They wanted to compare that. And that was also instigated a bit by Paul as well. He had that idea that, you know, he felt the symbology of it, let's call it that. He didn't feel that it was something that needed to happen necessarily, but he felt the symbology of it, and he felt it was a symbol of, you know, the fact that my coming to the earth was a part of, you know, people learning the truth that eventually can save them. So he understood what was called the saving process that of my presence on the earth in the first century, but unfortunately it got highly distorted after that and revised, and all of these principles amalgamated with each other. And so what we ended up with was a belief system that my blood and my body somehow saved people from their sins, and that were a sign of them being saved if they accepted my blood and my body. And the whole concept of take, eat, this means my body, and take, eat, drink, this means my blood, would have actually horrified me in the day, because I was a vegan at the time, and I would never have eaten or drank blood or eaten the body of anything at that point in time. I stopped eating meat when I was around 13 years of age in the first century, and the whole concept of you know, drinking someone's body or drinking someone's blood or eating someone's body, you know, is a concept that I fail to have any attraction to. I can't be attracted to it whatsoever. Yeah. But I understand why religions have taken it on. because they do want this simple process of being saved. They want, they don't want themselves to take full responsibility for their lives. They don't want to take full responsibility for their personal actions. They like the concept that somebody else can come along and pay for their actions and their problems. And this concept is very, very flawed, very dangerous concept actually, because it causes many people to believe that they can do things over and over again, and just by accepting the blood or body of Jesus, those things get wiped away from them. And many of these people, when they pass into the spirit world, feel like they think they're passing into a place where they're going to be in a good condition, and unfortunately, because of their justification of their own actions, they're in a very, very bad condition, and many of them are severely disappointed because of this teaching.
Okay.